Daniella Giancarli is a self-taught astrologer specializing in self-awareness journeys, nodal coaching, and synastry readings. By using degree theory and other important methods, she is able to take the abstract concepts of astrology and transform them into practical tools for use in everyday life situations. Whether you want to learn more about your relationship with others or just want to learn more about yourself, she will leave you with greater insight and new perspective. Thank you for being here, Daniella.
Thank you for having me.
We are so excited. Like since we started this, we wanted an astrologer on here.
Awesome.
So it's
That
great.
was literally one of the first things Liz said to me before we had even started.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think I only wanted astrologers.
Yeah. Actually, you're the reason we did this entire podcast.
Exactly. So tell us how your career trajectory, how you got into astrology, because that's somewhat of a new thing, it sounds like. So
Right. So, well, honestly, the practice of astrology is really old. I think it's coming so into the mainstream now because people are so wanting to understand themselves more. So I think that's been really cool. My background is all in media and writing. So I've always had like a bunch of different little jobs in that. And then a few years ago is when I really started studying astrology. I was media coordinator at a startup in San Francisco, and I'd get all my work done like really early in the morning just because I was like, I want to study astrology. And I would just study and study and study. And then I realized like I was giving all my friends and families readings and they wanted to learn more. And then I was like, wait, I could really like do something with this and really take it even further. So it's been a good journey so far. Yeah.
it's nice to see it more in the mainstream. I mean, maybe it's just moving to Boulder. That is part of me thinking it's now in the mainstream.
Right.
But like I started getting readings probably 20 years ago. And I've had my kids' charts read, and my husband and I have had a couples one. And I never talked about it ever because it was kind of like in New York City, like you just don't talk about that.
Right.
And now I feel like it's like such a normal thing to be like, well, I'm a Capricorn, so you know what I mean? And people actually, they either laugh and have no clue, or they're like, oh, that makes sense, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I think for sure. I think that it's funny because I feel like women are much more open to the concept, but then as soon as you get, from my experience, any male hooked on it, they're way more hooked than any girl.
Funny.
And they want to know everything. They want to know the compatibility with every woman that they know. And it's really funny. So I think once we get the males more on board, then like it'll be just more of a tool because I just see it more as a language. It's not really like something to believe in or not. I think that once people understand that they can communicate and use that as a tool, they're like, wait, this is actually really helpful and really inspiring. So
That's awesome. My brother-in-law, when my husband and I first started dating, my brother-in-law was like, get her details, and like did a chart and like Matt didn't tell me until
Matt's brother
did it.
Amazing.
And was like, let me see what you guys are gonna, if this is like a good call. Yeah.
It's important.
I know.
It's really important.
Well, so before we dive, I know we have so many questions that we want to ask about that, but before we jump all the way into that, I want to ask you a little bit about your past. You used to be a D1 soccer player.
I was for the first half of my college career. I actually played at 2 different programs, and then decided to hang up the cleats in the middle and go abroad. But soccer has always been a huge part of my identity. Even every weekend as a child, like going to different states with my mom, we would drive everywhere all over the East Coast. And it definitely really changed once I got to college, and it really I even was like talking to a few of my friends before coming on here today. I'm like, how would you describe it? Really, just how like it affects your body image and stuff. And it really is kind of like a battle of that, I think, because you're now reaching the level where everyone is good. You're not just like, can't just rely on your soccer skills. And I think like, just like how that can change your body image and things was like a lot. And then I think that's when I started to lean more into spirituality, because it really was like, okay, my body is not just only thing that I am, like it's my mind and my spirit, and like there's other things. So I think understanding that was my like biggest lesson in terms of like how I bridged my spirituality with soccer, was just like understanding that I'm more than just like a body.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Didn't you say they used to measure your fat?
Yeah. So body mass index testing is a big thing. There was actually my first program, they had it pasted on the walls. So they had everyone's BMI like in a list.
They listed yours?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And like there was like a green zone, yellow zone, red zone.
Oh my God.
And if you were like too low, too high of a body fat, then you had to do what they call breakfast club. So I had to go to do sprinting at either like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. in the
But
morning.
you're tiny. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, my body has changed a lot. So definitely was more bulking at the time. And that's really, I think, hard too, when you're like 18, 19 and you're just getting there and you're
in college and
you just like want to be high, I think, at
Totally.
that age
Yeah.
too. Like, so part of you like has this job and this thing to uphold, and then part of you just like wants to be a normal teenager. And then, yeah, so that was really definitely really hard mentally to be like, oh, I have to worry about getting body fat tested in the middle of the gym with like boys around on the other
Oh.
teams, and it's just kind of like a little
that's horrible.
vulnerable moments.
Yeah,
but-
that sounds like not a great setup for support.
right. And I think that
Were they getting their fat tested?
yeah, I mean, like men, if you're training at that level,
There-
like they
but
don't
it's
even
no
have to,
issue.
they're like,
Yeah.
the most fit boys had like almost like less than 1%.
Yeah.
Like they're like all under 6. And like for girls, they wanted us all to be under 21. And I was at like 23 at one point. So it was like I had to do breakfast club. But I think that the hardest thing about it is that also understanding that it takes a long time to lose weight. You can't lose weight overnight, and especially when your body is stressed, which just being in college in general, you're stressed.
Mhm.
So I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect of what actually is possible in such small time and such quick results that they want. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
I mean, I
was-
think that carries in a lot of areas of life, even for adults, right? Is
Yeah.
that there's this
Mm.
like, oh, well, like just start running and you'll be fine,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
also think it's so great to see finally all these women in professional sports speaking up. I mean, unfortunately, it's taken some really bad things,
right.
sexual abuse, things like that, to make this happen. But, you know, I'd like to think hopefully your college isn't doing that anymore. Right? And if they are, someone needs to finally be able to say something. you know?
Right. It's just like such a fine line, because I think that there is part of you that needs to be held accountable a little bit when you are that age, because the
But
trainers.
maybe it's in private, you know what I
Right,
mean? Like maybe it's
right.
like, listen, this is something we use as a metric.
For sure.
You'll be a better soccer player if you're a little lighter or whatever,
Yeah.
but not this like public kind of shaming part of it.
Yeah.
But you'll
Yeah.
also be a better soccer player if you have like support of your team and your coaches. And if it's
Yeah.
like, this is like one metric, and also here's how you've been performing in your position on the team. And also, how is your mental health? And also, how are you doing in school?
Right.
Right.
You know, if it was like a little more holistic.
Yeah. I think that that's the problem. It's not as holistic as it needs to be. And I think, not every coach is the same. I'm not going to sit here and like say every coach is the same, but I think there's definitely a common theme with a lot of girls I know at a lot of different schools. And it's just, there is definitely a disconnect of that mental health piece to the physical. Like if a girl has a sprained ankle that day, there's no doubt that she's not playing in that practice. But then, someone might have had like a mental breakdown that day, but she still has to get out on the field. So I think that just understanding that mental health takes a strain on you just as much as the physical. I think there just needs to be a little bit more of a connection with that. And like the coaches really need to respect that, because I don't think that there's enough of it, enough like that respect of the mental health. So
100%.
Yeah.
Did you, as you started getting more into spirituality, did you continue playing soccer, or were you not able to do both at that time? And like, do you miss it? I mean,
yeah, so for me too, when I realized that I was going to go abroad, I actually studied in Sydney, Australia. It was amazing. But I realized in the time I just kind of needed a break from soccer, and I just also really toned down my whole physical journey in general, because working out had just become like a chore, not really something I loved doing, which I always have been very active. So I think that once I started making strides in my spiritual journey, whether it was studying the astrology or really getting into meditation and Buddhism and things like that, but then I realized that I would hit blocks, like mental blocks, and I wasn't getting pushed further or by myself. And I've had a life coach since I was in sophomore in high school. His name is August Lemming. He's amazing. And one of the things he kept saying as I was trying to get further in my journey, he was like, well, what are you doing to work out? And I'd be like, I don't need to do that right now. Like he said, you're not going to get where you need to get if you don't keep doing something. And I fought that forever, and I'm a little stubborn. And once it was the summer of going into my senior year, I actually started doing Orange Theory. And that simultaneously was the time that my spiritual growth really jumped, because I finally figured out something that worked for me, that didn't feel like a chore, that wasn't like the PTSD of sprinting at soccer, but still pushing me. And then once I had those two things combined of like having my routine back down physically and my spiritual journey, it was just like, it was night and day of like where I could go and what I could realize and what I could learn about astrology. So that's what really helped me. And I've been doing Orange Theory now for like 2 years. I love it. I recommend it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because,
Yeah, of
you know,
course.
Yeah, and I definitely, I had so many years of body image issues, like, when I was younger, it was really all cardio. Like a woman would never do strength training because it was going to quote unquote bulk you up.
Yep.
And the minute I started doing strength training, my body changed, and now I've just stayed consistent, but that forever, it was like these yo-yos of gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight,
Yeah.
losing weight, and stressing about food. And I'm so glad that's behind me. But so much of it is like finding Orange Theory, like finding that thing that works for you, that you enjoy. It has to be enjoyable otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something I learned too. Like if it's not enjoyable, then you're not going to do it. Like,
yeah.
And if you are, it's not going to give you the same results, I don't think.
Well, it's not going to have the spiritual growth element.
Exactly.
Right. Which is, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
well, and there are just so many options now, like
my
there's
God,
the
so
internet, so you
many.
can research all the different things you might want to do. Everything is like available virtually, which might not always be the best option, but like their options are out there.
No excuses at this point.
Well, but I'm also, like a big fan of like, doing the things that feel good. And I tend to like not share about my exercise with people because I like don't want it to be a social thing. Like to me, it's really important that it's like a thing I do for myself when it feels good and the way it feels good. And even like I recently am now Pelotoning, which I am like so embarrassed by how much I love it. I love it so much. And just makes
It's a
me
good
like,
thing to love.
I know it's just
Pelotoning. I like that it's a verb.
Yeah.
but one of our friends was like, oh, I like looked you up on Peloton and saw you didn't like ride this week. And I was like, fuck you, dude. Like that's not your business.
Absolutely. It's why my husband wants me to get on Strava, which is this, it's like social networking for athletes. And I'm like, my workout is for me. I don't want my times up. I don't want anyone analyze. Like that is my like only time that I am not thinking about anything that has to be finished or deadline or money or you know what I mean? Anything accomplished. And like, yeah, absolutely not. I think that platform has been amazing for so many people. For my husband, it's been terrific. But like, just like you, like that's my time. That's not for anyone to look at or judge
and
or
I
anything.
think there are people who feel like the like group mentality around exercise actually makes it more desirable. I just am
Exactly.
not one of them.
Yeah. Agreed.
I'm like, don't talk to me.
Like when I used to go to spinning in New York all the time, this place called Flywheel. And at first I would get up on the leaderboard, but like I'm so competitive that it almost is not healthy for me to be up there. And I was like, I'm taking myself off and I'm going to enjoy this ride and not have it be this like other New York City thing where I have to like push and get ahead and beat that person. And like we had enough of that in our daily lives there that, so.
A Leo moon that's competitive.
I know, right?
All right, let's go back to astrology then.
Let's dive in.
Okay, let's do it. So what I prepared today is called a synastry reading. So for those who don't understand, a synastry reading is when you look at two charts and you put them together and you look at the aspects between them. And what aspects are just called relationships between the planets. Similarly, you can also do a composite chart, and that's when you actually overlay the charts and you find the midpoints between each thing. So for you two, you would have a composite sun of Scorpio because that's the midpoint of your two suns. So we're going to focus more on the synastry, but you can also do composite charts, which is really cool.
Interesting. That'll be part 2.
Yeah.
I feel like you just gave me several more hours of research I need to do now. I'm like,
I
oh,
know.
really?
More rabbit
Yes,
holes to go down
totally.
for sure. Yeah, so just to get a little insight over to you guys and also just to explain it a little bit more, the biggest thing in astrology is really, like they say, your big three is your sun, moon, rising. And the sun is where everyone always knows is like that's your sign and that changes every month. And then the moon changes every 2.5 days approximately. So that really affects our inner world. The moon is our inner world and emotions, and it's who we are when we're deeply comfortable. So when you're in a relationship or your best friends, you really are interacting with each other's moon signs way more than your sun's.
Interesting.
And what's interesting for you guys is that Liz has a Leo moon and Emily has a Virgo moon, and these are one away from each other in the wheel. So if you look at it, the zodiac as a karmic wheel, each sign learns a lesson from the previous one. And Virgo and Leo are very much signs of service. Leo wants to lead, and Leo wants to kind of have this regal demeanor and kind of show their worth through being needed in that way. Whereas a Virgo can really be of service in the details. So I
amazing,
think
isn't it?
that's a good dynamic between you guys, is that sometimes Virgo can get a little lost in the details, and the Leo moon can kind of be like, well, here's the bigger picture of it. But then sometimes the Leo gets too big picture, and then the Virgo can kind of bring you back down. So that's a nice, I think, first off the bat, little.
I mean, that
symmetry.
alone, just like,
Yeah,
I don't even know what to say. That is so right on.
Yeah.
Totally.
even like when we first started the podcast, you were like, okay, let's set a launch date. And I was like, well, I mean, but there's so much more that we should really like discuss and think about and like make sure we're like really, really fine tuned, you know?
Right.
And Liz
Well,
was
or-
like, no, we're
Or
doing
even
this.
like, I was like, let's do a podcast about all these things. And Emily's like, let's narrow it down to a theme. We need a theme, right? And that
Right.
like, that made it, like, that made so much sense. Otherwise it's a podcast about everything and nothing, right?
Right.
So, yeah,
Awesome.
I
Sorry.
know.
Yeah, that's
Anyway.
awesome. And also too, so if you bring in, so when we talk about degrees, it's a lot easier when we're visualizing, but if you look at the wheel, every sign has 30 degrees, but it's from 0 to 29. So 0 is a really important degree because it just emphasizes whatever sign that is. So you have your moon, Liz, at 0 degrees Leo. So
Okay.
that means it's like super Leo because it's in its natural 0 degree. And for you, Emily, you actually have your moon at the 6th degree, which is a Virgo degree. So you're
Huh.
actually even more emphasized of that Virgo moon, which I also think is pretty interesting. And then when we're looking at synastry charts between romantic partners, the next thing I like to do is look at your Venus and your Mars. I just want to touch on that really quick, but because we're not going to really focus on that with you guys. But your Venus is how you love and what you're attracted to. It's really everything that has to do with attraction. And the one thing I want to say about both of you guys together is that, so for Liz, you have your Venus at the 4th degree, and Emily has hers at the 16th degree, which are both Cancer degrees.
Huh.
So I think that's also really interesting that you probably show love through stability and coziness, and like a lot of Cancer likes to find their worth through that stability. So I think that can also be translated to your work-life balance, because maybe there's times where you want to make sure people feel comfortable on your show, or you want to make sure each other are feeling comfortable about what's being discussed and things like that. So I think it's really cool that even though your Venuses are in different positions, you have that shared Cancer degree, which is really cool.
Huh, very cool.
I thought that was just because we're both women.
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah, so I think there's a built-in comfort with your guys' relationship.
Mm.
So just talking a little bit more individually before I go into more of your synastry, I just wanted to do a little bit of that as well. So each of you has a trine. So I'm going to explain that. A grand trine is when you have 3 of the same elements in your chart. So for you, Emily, you have a grand water trine, which means that you have Scorpio, Cancer, and Scorpio, Cancer, and Pisces all in your chart. And that gives you the gift of water. Water is here to emote. It is here to make people feel things and really understand things that are more in the subconscious than they're aware of. So water energy really brings that out of people, which I think is really interesting. And then when we look at Liz's chart, you actually have a grand trine as well, but you have grand trine and fire. So your grand trine
Yep.
is all about inspiring and motivating and really breaking boundaries. Fire wants to be remembered. It's warm. And what's interesting too is fire and water are really more of the intuitive gut instinct type. And then air and earth really rely more on logic. So you guys really trust your gut feelings in different ways. You really can understand, Emily, like the gut, okay, I said something and their tone of voice was off with that. Like you really understand that subconsciously. And then for you probably more subconsciously understand like, okay, if we don't do X, Y, and Z, this is not going to get done or something like that. So
We're laughing because this is
Oh my
so spot on. Oh my
yeah,
God.
so I think that's really interesting. And then for you, Emily, you actually have a really interesting placement. You have a grand cross. So a grand cross is when you take it a step further, there's also 3 modes of the zodiac: cardinal, mutable, and fixed. And the cardinal signs begin each season. So Libra, Capricorn, Cancer, and Aries are all the beginning of their respective seasons. They kind of are the leaders, they get things going. And for you, you have all of these in your chart. So there might be a power struggle within yourself that you feel like you have this energy to like surge forward and lead, but you might not always know which direction to go with it, even though you know how to lead, which is really nice because with Liz has a lot of fixed energy. So fixed signs, Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, and Leo are in the middle of each season. And they really can keep things going that the cardinal signs begin. So for you, you have the staying power that Emily needs to like keep things moving and be like, okay, we did all that. Now let's like take it home. So that's what I think is really cool between your charts. And I think just understanding with that grand cross, like you can't get too like frustrated with yourself because you have all these little gifts and different ways to lead. But I think just being patient with yourself is like probably the best advice that you have with all that cardinal energy.
I feel like I am just at the beginning of my journey of learning that. And leadership has been a thing that has been a theme for me in my entire life. Like even in high school, people were like, you are a leader, be a leader. And I was like, I don't know. You know, everyone was
Right.
like trying to get me to be really like vocal and like forward. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I owned a business, which is leadership. And it was super challenging. Like I constantly, like I kept saying for 6 years that I would just do the beginning part over and over again. Like if I could just start a business over and over again, I would do that.
Right.
It was my
Yeah.
favorite part.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that like perfectly explains that cardinal energy of like, this is starting, like start. But then it's like when you have to complete it, you're like, well, do I want this, and that? And that's where someone with a lot of fixed or mutable energy, which you have a lot of mutable too, because you have some Sagittarius and you have noticed within your chart. And I think that's really cool. There's that balance that you guys have, even from like what I see so far of meeting you guys. It seems like that dynamic definitely fits.
Yeah, very much. But, you know, we talk a lot about these. I mean, we don't have this tool exactly until now. So thank you. But,
Yeah.
but we talk a lot about this dynamic and how it's like, you know, how do we appreciate that we have these different things to bring to the table versus feeling like, well, I just want to start something new. Why don't you want to start something new? Or like Liz feeling like I'm trying to like complete this thing that we're doing. Why aren't you doing this?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I think it can be a source of frustration on both our sides.
for
And it's
sure.
really good for Emily to like give me the faith to like just stay calm and not always have to do, like push. And then sometimes I think she needs a bit of the push. And so we're like good for each other. Like she really calmed me down the other day and it's really helped me a lot. But I get like very anxious about, you know, stability and that kind of thing. So
Right.
yeah, it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah. So then now touching into your chart a little more, I think, well, for starters, Capricorn and Leo are 2 of the most ambitious signs of the zodiac, and so is Scorpio. So
I
you have
know,
that
I
as
am
your sun,
shocked.
moon, rising.
It's awesome though, right?
No, it's great, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And like, I understand that it's a lot. And
Right.
it's hard for me to understand why people don't have the same thing, right? Because it's so much that I'm like, of course you feel this way, right? You're like, no.
No, and I'm actually a Leo moon too, so I totally relate to that struggle where you're like, well, I can go this extra mile, so why didn't they do that as well?
Totally.
And it's just, you're never going to fully understand it, but you just kind of have to accept it.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's also really interesting about your chart, so just for explanation for everyone, your rising sign is, or known as the ascendant, is where the horizon began the moment that you were born. That's why you only know your true chart with the actual birth time. So for you, your rising sign is in Scorpio. So that's where the horizon began the minute you were born. And that is where you then load in all the houses into the situation. So if a sign gives a planet life and a mode to act in, the house then adds another layer and gives it a theme. So the first house is our physical body, it's in our appearance. Second house is stability, our material needs. The third house are mental, and like so on. There's 12 houses, there's 12 signs. So for you, you have the Scorpio rising, which is very, very intense. And a lot of famous people have this as well. And it's actually known as like the universal healer, the zodiac. So you might feel like you have a lot of healing energy in you. And one thing I tell people that have this placement or have that healing vibe in them is that it kind of can be a little lonely. And that's why there's times where you said, well, why didn't they do that? Why can't they do it? And it's like, because they're not the healer that you are. And the healer can be lonely because they can heal other people, but not everyone can heal and help you. So having and understanding that position is like, I think, one will allow you to feel less lonely and more empowered by it,
Yeah,
but also just less frustrated at people.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I need less of that
Right.
because it's pointless,
Right.
right? And it just
sure.
adds to agitation inside of me, which isn't helping anything, right?
Right.
And it's funny you say that about the healer because I've had like 3 intuitives in the last couple of years say like, you're a healer. And I'm like, but I don't feel called to like do that. And they're like, it doesn't have to be work. Like that's what we don't, it's so American to kind of be like, oh, that means I'm supposed to go like be a Reiki practitioner. I've done Reiki
Mhm.
training and I love it from on a personal level, but I don't want to like do it. And they're like, no, it could just be you healing yourself. It could be you healing your family. Like it doesn't mean like that's what you're meant to do for a living. And that was a big distinction to learn. But it's interesting you say that because I've heard that so much in the last couple of years.
Really? Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And that's the thing too. I think when people hear healer, they think they need to go like become like the Buddha tomorrow.
right.
And like you don't need to do that. You just need to keep living your life the way you do, because the reason you get frustrated with everyone else is that you have these high morals and values, and then you just kind of act upon them. And that's all you need to do. It doesn't need to be this grand thing. And even just doing your podcast and enlightening people also is helping
Or
them out.
convert everyone else, which
Yes.
is,
For sure.
I do think that's really interesting. I was going to also say, Liz and I talk often,
Mhm.
and you've talked about people saying that you're a healer, but I haven't heard you say that anyone added that like this might be lonely or this might be frustrating.
yeah, yeah,
like that's a
it's
pretty
me too.
interesting layer.
It is, and it hits home
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. So then when we jump into your rising sign, Emily, which I really love about your guys' connection is, so you have your rising in Cancer. So Scorpio and Cancer are both water signs. And what's really cool is that, so even though you have a grand fire trine, Liz, you do lead with that water. And that's why you lead as being that healer. And what's really nice is, I think with having rising water, one, you are just really in tune with the energy of the room and stuff, but also adding the layer of comfort to people is really nice. But when you take it a step further, so your rising is where the horizon began when you were born, right? But then the midhaven is where we begin the 10th house. The 10th house is our public identity. Interestingly, you both also trine in fire as your midhavens. So you have your midhaven in Leo and you have yours in Aries. Stop me if I'm getting too far.
No,
now.
I love it.
Okay. So what's cool is that you can kind of think of it this way. Your rising sign is your selfie, and your midhaven MC is your LinkedIn profile picture.
How funny.
That's
I
kind of
love
the
that.
difference how you
Yeah.
can look at it. So what's really cool for both of you is that your LinkedIn profile picture is that inspiration, motivation, but then what people really see in like maybe the day-to-day of how they interact with you actually is a little bit more of that emotional side.
Mhm.
So maybe on your podcast, people are really hearing and feeling that fire energy that you both carry, but then in your relationships and your day-to-day, you actually are more of that watery vibe. So I think that's really cool, is that you have that connection between you two. And I think that like when you have this public identity to motivate and inspire, it almost does emphasize your emotional parts more, because at the end of the day, you can't motivate people unless you get to them a little bit somewhere emotionally. So I think for you to both have that balance of that intuitive water fire connection is really cool connection for you guys to have.
Wow.
I know, that's really cool.
That's really cool. It makes me think about so many things.
Yeah.
Like, you know, for me, I mean, actually, Daniella, tell me if this is true or not.
Yeah.
But like one of the things I've worked really hard on is I think I spent so much of my earlier life having people like reflect back to me that kind of public image, LinkedIn profile sort of situation. And then internally, I was like, that's not really how I feel though, you know? And I think that trying to like come to terms with how emotional I am and letting that like be okay is still something I'm trying to figure out. But it's like a really tricky balance for me.
Right.
And it is actually really helpful to hear that it's like, it doesn't have to be a conflict actually.
No, not at all.
Like everyone has that dual thing in a
Yeah.
way, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting. And I think that also too, like maybe you don't feel the need to rationalize all of like your feelings or thoughts you have on the show, which is kind of maybe what makes it more fluid, is because, you know, there might be other people that have very specific shows or things that they know exactly what the facts are. But I think with you guys, with this fire and water blend that you share, you really can allow your show or even your relationship to just be very fluid and just kind of be what it is on that day. And that's what needs to be that day. But then tomorrow we could do a whole different thing. And that's like the beauty of water and fire, is it really can change and flow.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very cool.
It's not wrong.
So another thing I wanted to talk about with these MCs especially is understanding. Well, one, I think what's really interesting about yours is you have that 0 degree, Emily. And I think that coming to terms with that fireness is going to be really important for you. So one of the biggest things of my practice personally is doing North Node coaching. So what is the North Node? The North Node is where the moon's rotation around the sun meets the sun's rotation around the earth. So there's a north and south node in that, and they're not a planetary body. It's just a point in the sky. And this changes every 18 years. So currently we have our North Node in Gemini and South Node in Sagittarius, and this is going to be moving in January time. So what does that mean for our individual charts? So it's kind of when you think of it like a yin yang situation, your South Node is the gifts that you already came here with.
Okay.
And it's like your gifts to others. And your North Node is what's going to nourish your soul and what you need to give to yourself. So for you, you have your North Node in Aries, and then you have, Emily, this is you, and you have your MC in Aries as well. So your public identity and what you're also trying to get to is that Aries warrior leader. So that means that your South Node is in Libra, which can be kind of hard. So conjunct means that planets are in the same place. So you have your Libra sun conjunct your South Node Libra. It's kind of a complicated position because a lot of your identity actually has to do with that past life, earlier life, which is to be the balance. Libra is the sign of balance, harmony, one-on-one relationships, aesthetics, beauty. So a lot of you wants to gravitate towards that, like peacekeeping and things. But really your public identity and your highest self is asking you, no, I need to become that warrior a little bit. And I think that what's really interesting and awesome about your guys' relationship is because you have, so Liz's 6th house, which has to do with rules and regulations and health and routines. Her 6th house starts at Aries. So for you, continuing those routines of being a warrior in the routines actually is really helping Emily's North Node really shine through because it's in Aries. Does that,
Interesting.
yes. And I feel like we've talked about this actually, because as we've talked about this like time in our lives together being partners, and like I don't know how many times I've said it to you, but I know that I keep thinking and sometimes say out loud with my words that like what I'm learning from this partnership is so incredibly valuable to me.
And I feel the
You know,
exact same
Like
way.
I feel like it's, yeah, I think I said to you at one point, I thought we were like cosmologically meant to do this. So
Yeah,
that we
like
could
we
each
were
learn.
meant to
Yeah.
be in each other's lives because
Yeah.
there's so much growth that's happening, I think, both for us while working through this partnership.
Totally.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Yeah, and then for you, Liz, you have your North Node in Aquarius. So that's actually in opposition with your public identity. So what's really interesting is that I think with North Node Aquarius, you're learning how to be as emotionally reactive to things and more looking at the logical picture, whether that's just being the observer witness, whereas you don't need to always like inject what needs to be done because like we said, the Leo moon knows, but sometimes it's more about letting other people figuring it out themselves.
Amazing.
And that's where is going to nourish your soul in this time.
Oh man. All right.
And then just taking it back to the sixth house.
But
which,
I always understood my North Node was like work versus family. Is that right? North versus South or no?
no,
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay, good.
I think it's more about, I don't know if you believe in past life. A lot of people that don't, you
I
could just
do
say
very much.
earlier lives. Okay, so yeah, so past life. In the past life, you were that creative Leo leader. And now in this life, you need to be more of the background leader, if that
Oh,
makes sense.
interesting.
I think what's really interesting to learn about astrology too is that everything is on an axis. So signs that are 6 away are called sister signs. And I think the Aquarius Leo axis is all about leading, but in different ways. Leo wants to be the regal leader that like gets praised. And then Aquarius is cool with being the one in the back where everybody knows that if the Aquarius wasn't there, it would fall apart, but they don't need that recognition. So maybe for you, your journey is more understanding, okay, certain people need to tell me that they're proud of me, maybe your husband or maybe Emily, but you don't need it from the masses. And I think understanding that will really help your journey because in return, you'll get more done.
I hope it's okay to share this, but
Yeah,
like
please.
literally last week, Liz was like, I need you to like thank me for what I do more. And I was like, that is not the first time I've had that feedback. Like, I just don't think about it because that's not like the thing that I need. And I
Right.
just literally don't, it doesn't mean I don't feel, appreciation and gratitude. It just isn't like a habit of mine,
Right.
Yeah, and like I'll go on forever if I just feel
Yeah.
appreciated. But
Mhm.
when I feel like it's not appreciated, then I get pissed,
Right.
like resentful.
Yeah, that's your Leo moon. And I think what's interesting is too, is like that is like the textbook difference of a Virgo and Leo is that Virgo will work tirelessly at something just because they want perfection. But a Leo will work tirelessly at something because they want to feel that sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
Like
sorry.
accomplishment.
Like recognition.
Yeah, recognition.
I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
And just like, wow, that was a job well done. Whereas Virgo will look at a room and just like reorganize the whole thing just because they want it to look perfect.
Right.
They don't care that they get the credit for it.
Sure.
And I think
Leo
that,
needs a lot of credit.
yeah. And that's okay though. I mean, I think that's also the beauty of the Aries Leo connection is that Aries and Leo both really want to feel special.
Hmm.
It's not even that they want to feel better than other people. They want to feel special and that people recognize their energy and feeling special. So especially because you have that midhaven connection of Aries Leo, just the right people acknowledging your specialness can go a long way.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good advice for me to give as well.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things
Not
that
just
I
take.
am loving about this and that I generally have found really valuable about astrology is the like you're exploring these different things that we all have, but none of them are bad, right? Like we might have different challenges,
Yeah.
but like there's not like a particular sign that's a bad thing,
Well, and it makes you feel seen. Like that's my biggest thing more than anything. So it's like, oh, that's why I feel so fucking ambitious all the time. Like it's like a hunger that's like unsatiable. Great. That's not my, like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just who I am. It's almost like it's not my fault or something. And same with you being more in the emotional realm. And, I think and then important for us to understand each other. We're not like trying to aggravate each other. It's just where we are.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And I think that another thing I like to explain to people that have a huge emphasis on a certain element in their chart is like why you feel the need to put more energy towards that one thing than the other. Like for you, Emily, with the grand water trine, why do you feel the need to make other people comfortable all the time? But like, are you feeling comfortable right now? And then like with inspiring people with the grand fire trine, it's like, why do I need to keep motivating? Why can't I just relax today? Like,
Great question.
Because there's other people that go through their day and they play video games all day and they hang out
No
at home
problem,
and they
right?
don't feel bad at all
I
about not
know.
being ambitious, and they're still paying their bills and they're still getting through their life. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, it's like when we have these grand trines, it also forces us to kind of acknowledge like why we're striving so hard at one thing. I mean, it makes us
Huh,
unique and it
interesting.
makes us who we are. So you can't question yourself too much, but whenever you're feeling like, I think, overwhelmed by that power in you, then you kind of can take a step back and like, okay, what's the opposite of this? Ambition, the opposite is just relaxing. Okay, the opposite of feeling, just being, like, you know, so.
Yeah, and I think like for me, work is relaxing.
mm,
And that's what I think a lot of people are different in that way.
right.
Like I find it relaxing to get things done. I find it relaxing. I love to work. I love it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
for a lot of people, it's like they're working until they can stop and then they have their time.
right.
And I don't have that boundary. It's not always good. It's not always easy to
Right,
deal with
right.
me. But it doesn't feel bad to me. It feels great. So yeah, so I have to like
Interesting.
recognize that not everyone has that
Right.
and not like think they're less than just because they're not as like motivated all the time. You know
Right.
what I mean?
For sure.
So yeah, you don't really turn off.
I don't ever. Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah, I think that's the beauty though of that like water and fire connection, but also because that also I think really has to do with Capricorn. That's your sun. So Capricorns just kind of always feel the need to be working, and almost in a way it's like, well, if I don't do it, then no one's gonna do it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
Yeah. It's
I
like a
think-
glutton for punishment or something.
right. I think also understanding that like the world is not gonna fall apart if I stop right now. It's like I always tell a Capricorn that. Like
Yeah. Okay.
just go have a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Or,
I
like,
need to hear that.
Yeah, like take a breath and then maybe tomorrow see what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's so
Exactly.
great.
Oh my God. Well, so I was kind of wondering, Liz and I obviously are not skeptical about this, but I know a lot of people are still pretty skeptical. So do you have things that you say to people who, just feel like this is all kind of, I don't know.
Woo woo or bullshit.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. I always say, and I know I kind of said it a little bit earlier, astrology is a language. And I mean, even as some of the things that you heard me say today, like maybe you didn't know about like the cardinal mode or mutable mode, and people think that, oh, you hear this one thing about their sun sign and then you don't relate to it, but really it's because they have a stellium, which means you have 3 or more planets in a different sign. So, there's just all these little nuances about it that I try to emphasize that over. One thing I always do say is you have free will in your life. Like you can do anything you want, and your sun sign or any sign is not going to affect that. But if you can use your birth chart to help you make those decisions and change, that can actually probably help you get to where you want to go a lot faster and with a lot less confusion. Because at the end of the day, I look at astrology as the cheat code of self-awareness.
yes, totally.
So I think that was
Yeah,
the response I was
Yeah.
going for.
It is. It's just like, oh, this is why it's like this.
Right.
Well, and I think I
Yeah.
say a similar thing to people who don't believe in therapy as much as I
Yeah.
do, which no one believes in therapy as much as I do. I think everyone should do it. I think it's the best. But I always say it's not that like by digging down into your childhood and your like family trauma that like things are then suddenly different, or that you like can't have your life without that. It's just like a way of understanding what's going on for you so that you can like make choices that feel good, just
Absolutely.
doesn't
And
like-
why you're making those choices.
yeah, like it just
totally.
doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a thing that you like dive so deep into that you think that this is the only way to understand life.
Right.
It's just helpful.
For sure.
Well, and what's interesting tying it into the wine business, because a lot of us believe in the biodynamic calendar, and that is affected by the moon. And it's when wines are drinking well.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people that make wine with the cycles of the moon. And, I like to say to people who are like, astrology is bullshit. And I'm like, do you believe in the biodynamic calendar? Because it's like the same thing, basically. I mean, it's
Right.
like, it's different, obviously, but there's something very cosmic about the biodynamic calendar. And yet some of the squarest people I know believe it. And I don't mean just people that wouldn't normally believe in astrology.
Right.
So anyway, just throwing that out.
Right,
there.
like our bodies somehow are different than like the planet, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Or like,
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that I'm actually really starting to study now, I'm not offering readings yet, but we're gonna get there. I don't know if
you're
you-
not? My God.
No,
You
for this.
should.
No, for the next thing, for the next thing. I
Okay.
don't know, have you heard of human design?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I actually also have your charts up here for that too, but for those who don't know, human design is,
You are like killing two birds with one stone here. Because when we started to talk to you, I was thinking, oh, remember to think about a human design. So
Oh,
this is
really?
perfect. Yes, truly.
yeah, so basically, I'm blanking on, it's Ra Uru. I'm blanking on it.
That's
Ra
all right.
Uru.
We'll look it up. We'll look it up and list it here.
Basically he went on this journey and was enlightened, and basically he was told all of the rules of this practice by the source, he called it, or whatever you would like to call it, the divine. And then people started looking at it and putting in birth times and things, and they're like, wait, this is so accurate. And basically it's connecting your soul and your personality to the energy chakras of your body, so it really just connects everything.
Like a lot of different
Yeah.
ways are cool.
Yeah, and so for starters, there's 5 types in human design. So you have the generators, manifestors, manifesting generators, projectors, and reflectors.
I'm a manifester. I think
I have you like, oh no. Let me see.
I should be. I've taken a pretty deep dive into this, not for a long time.
I have you as a generator.
Oh, maybe I'm a generator.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
And
makes
I have
sense.
you as a manifesting generator.
Okay,
So the
interesting.
generators are the life force and people who are here to like lift
That is
the
what I am.
energy.
Thank you.
Yeah. And their strategy, so everyone has a strategy. Your strategy is to respond. And then for Emily, you're a manifesting generator, which is actually, this is really cool because I'm a manifester. So you're the midpoint between the generator and the manifester. So the manifester, I'm here to inform. So like literally what I'm doing right now is to like share ideas to the world. And then the manifesting generators and the generators respond to those. And then the projectors are here to kind of be invited to things and shed their light because they can kind of see all these nuances of stuff. And then reflectors are kind of here to soak up everyone else's energy. They're the most rare kind.
That's what my youngest son is.
Oh,
He's a
really?
reflector.
Yeah, it's like 1% of the population.
He like absorbs everyone's energy that he's with, and I'm trying to teach him to put up some boundaries. from
Really?
that.
But oh my God, is he the sweetest?
Yeah.
Well, it makes him
just
very
like-
malleable. Like he can kind of roll with whatever anyone's energy is. It's,
And
it's
they're
like a
the
little
most-
wizard or
Yeah,
something.
they're the most in tune with the moon cycles. Like their whole,
Interesting.
everything is all about like the moon, the moon, the moon. What I think is really interesting about your chart, Emily, which is really rare. So there's also definitions in the chart. So I'm a split definition, and so is Liz. And that just means you have 2 voices in your head. Single definition means you have 1, but you're actually a triple split
Cool.
definition.
Great.
So there is
Is
3
that
voices.
schizophrenia?
Right? Yes, getting there.
Clearly. It's funny though, because it really can relate to the medical, because I know a few people that actually have bipolar disorder and they are triple
Oh,
split.
I don't mean to joke about
No,
that.
it's, I
Yeah.
mean, it just is what it, that's what I think is the beauty of human design, is if you think that astrology is too like out there, look into human design, because it kind of really bridges them. I think human design really adds a layer of logic to it,
Yeah.
whereas astrology is kind of more abstract and you really have to know what you're talking about more. But I think it's really cool, and I think that it's easier when you're looking at a chart, but there are some ways that your charts overlap with one another. So if you look at like, there's different gates in the chart. So you both have like 10 filled in. So if you ever feel like, oh, when I'm around so-and-so, I get more motivated to get my work done, that's because you have gates that are connecting with each other that create channels in the human design. So
Huh.
yeah, that's just a little brief interview, but
That-
introduction, not interview.
You just
It-
let us know
it's-
when you want to do a whole episode.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. We'd
We
love
can get more
to.
into it, but yeah, so. just
Because
wanted to-
it's very, I mean, it's way more complex in terms of like, as you say, all the different channels or whatever they call
Yes.
it, gates.
Yeah.
I like did this sort of 2-hour seminar once, and I was like, writing everything, but
Yeah.
it was like, it's so much to kind of absorb.
Yeah.
But very cool.
Yeah, it is. Really
Yeah,
cool.
but it's very intricate, I feel like.
Yeah, like I'm looking at one of your, so one of the top gates is the 61 gate that connects to the 24 gate. So it connects the inspiration to the ideas, and there's 3 gates that do it. And for Liz, you have the 61 filled in, and so does Emily, but Emily has it connected to the ideas. So for 24, so that kind of explains a lot earlier where you said you want to talk about X, Y, and Z and this, but then Emily was like, no, we need a little bit more direction. That's that gate coming into play of being like, okay, we're connecting that inspiration to the actual ideas. So I think that's
And I'm just like, ideas.
yeah.
That's awesome.
So Daniela, I just, we're getting to being one of our longest podcasts, I think, which we
Yay.
would go on forever.
This is what I'm gonna have to listen to a lot because there's so much info. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For people who are, for everyone who's listening to this, who I'm sure is super excited, where can we find you? Where can people find you to do readings? What services are you offering?
Yeah, so I work in person at Rain Rituals, which is a wellness studio in 5 Points in Denver. And then also my website is divinedaniella.com. I can do any readings online, open Zoom.
And for all of our listeners, Rain Rituals is owned by our dear friend James Turner, who we interviewed last year.
Love her.
Exactly.
She's the best.
She's
She
the
is.
best. I know. That's so
She's such a
cool.
badass too.
I know.
Totally. Yeah, she's great.
Scorpio.
Is there like a, I don't know, what are the boundaries around sharing other people's charts? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because I feel like I'm not someone who would,
because they're a HIPAA.
yeah, exactly. Like
Right.
I wouldn't care if anyone knew any of this stuff about me, obviously, because
Obviously,
we're recording
right,
this.
right.
But is that a thing that people are sensitive about sometimes?
I personally haven't worked with anyone that's sensitive around it, but I'm definitely always aware of that. Like I never share things with other people. I mean, for me, everything with astrology is just a concept until you apply it. Like you could say X, Y, and Z about a Scorpio or Sun or whatever,
Right.
Venus, but for me, it's more just like a running study. So I don't share that with other people. It's just can then in return help me make better observations about other people's charts. I would never like take someone's chart and be like, oh, well, this person had this and they do this a lot. Like it's never like that. It's
Yeah.
just more adds to the study, if that makes sense. But there's definitely confidentiality, and whenever people don't want me to share things, then there's other people that want it to be shared, which is really interesting. Like they're like, oh no, post more about this, post about this. And I'm like, okay, well, if you want me to, but so yeah, I think it just depends on the person. I always try to respect everyone's privacy.
Yeah.
It just, it wouldn't have occurred to me at any point before. And then I was like, wait, is this like private stuff?
Right, exactly. And how did you know where to start? Because you say you're self-taught, which I think a lot of astrologers are,
Right.
but it is so multi-layered. I mean, you're
It
not,
is.
I mean, all the trines and the conjuncts, and I mean, we both have been reading the same book, and we've, gotten deeper, but I feel like I have to read the book now like a couple more times
What book
because
is
there
it?
was Chani Nicholas.
Okay.
There's just so much to absorb.
Okay.
They're just like
Yeah.
all the details of your own chart. And then I want to go through and read it for my kids. And I want to go through it. I mean, it's so, how did you know where to start?
I think at first it was really wanting to understand my own chart. And then once I understood every nuance of my own chart, I could then apply it to other charts. And then while simultaneously reading books and searching how to read a chart, I was learning my own self-awareness, and then also the self-awareness that I want other people to take away from my readings. Because at the end of the day, I'm still a student and I'm still learning everything every day. But I think that just understanding your own chart really helps you understand other people's charts.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does.
Because I think like understanding your desires and what you want, like with that Venus, like until you understand that about yourself, then it's hard to say what other people's are. And then also on top of it, regardless of all like what a trine means or what a stellium means or what the house is, just truly like researching each sign individually also really helps. So I think that one, understanding each sign and what they mean And then two, taking it a step further of finding people that you trust. Like I know it could sound weird at first, but it's like there's a huge Twitter community of astrologers, and they all have their own things on the side, but just learning who to trust on there first. And then there's certain astrologers I follow that have like PowerPoints and Word documents just posted to the public, just be like, these are all the books I read. This is everything. And then
Oh,
I'm like,
that's
okay, I
cool.
trust them. I'm gonna go read those books that they're recommending. And then just finding the right people to trust with it,
Yeah.
I think has helped me a lot.
It's like what we tell people about choosing wine.
Exactly.
Like find a good importer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it's also interesting what a translation it is because, I follow several astrologers on Instagram and I really respect, it's probably 2 or 3 of them and I respect them all, but like they're all saying more, in essence the same thing, but they have different translations of what's happening at the time. And it's just
Right.
interesting to see. It's also filtered. It's like the terroir of the winemaker. Like you can have a wine grown in a certain place by 2 different people. It's going to be a different wine because it's filtered through the person who made that wine.
Right.
So yeah, it's cool to kind of, I think, cross-reference these different moments in time. And
Right.
what's
Yeah.
happening.
And I think that for me and like the brand as an astrologer that I want to uphold is that I'm not claiming to be like the master astrologer that's predicting X, Y, and Z events in time. Like I don't necessarily want or need to be that person. I want to be the person that can take all these abstract concepts and make them applicable to everyone and
Yeah.
like have everyone really understand it. And I think that's my goal as an astrologer is just to understand it and to actually apply it to your life and not just see it as this daunting concept that you have to be super spiritual to know about,
Right.
right.
because it doesn't need to be that way. So
You certainly made it very clear for us today.
Oh, yeah, totally.
awesome.
And I don't want to put you on the spot because you maybe haven't looked into this,
Okay.
but do you have any thoughts about 2022 versus 2021? I mean, 2020, 2021, very tumultuous times.
Right.
Are we going to get a little crack through the clouds of the sunshine in 2022?
Yeah. So I know I touched upon earlier that the North Node is in Gemini right now, and the North Nodes also move backwards. That's another thing to be aware of. So when the North Node moves into Taurus in January, this is going to also free up the South Node of Sagittarius, where we are right now, and that is going to move into Scorpio. So I think that Sag being debilitated, which is the freedom-loving, optimistic sign of the zodiac, it's been lodged in the South Node for a while. And also too, I think that Gemini, its sister sign, is very cerebral. So, we've spent a lot of time really making strides in social movements and social justice and things like that in the world. And we've really thought about it and had conversations. Okay, now we're moving the North Node into Taurus, which is much more stable, solid earth. And I think that my own prediction for that would be that there's going to be a lot of actual concrete changes, whether that's with laws or anything that actually makes a difference, rather than just talking about making a difference. I think that's going to be the big change of 2022, in my opinion.
Great.
And I think that with Sag being freed up, Sag is ruled by Jupiter, and we also have Jupiter moving into Pisces on the 28th of December, which Jupiter is just growth and expansion. And I think there's been a lot of stagnancy with that, just because Jupiter has been in Aquarius and Capricorn the past few years, which are Saturn ruled signs, which are disciplinarian.
Yeah.
And I think that this kind of release of Jupiterian energy into the world in the next year is going to be, we're going to feel a lot more free, I think.
Nice.
Very promising.
Love that. Well, that might tie into the question we usually ask, which is, what are you excited about? So it could be that, or it could be separate from that if there's something personal, global, or anything to do.
I think as a collective, I'm excited for us to be more, everyone keeps saying, feel more normal again. I don't think we're ever going to feel fully normal. I think that just the world has changed now since everything in the pandemic, but I think just to feel more collected and more just out in the world again, I just get more excited about that every day. But I think also personally for my own journey, I've only been in Denver now for 2 months, so just to really keep exploring Colorado and my own identity as, a businesswoman and as a young adult, I think I'm just excited for that growth. And yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Danielle. This is
This has been delicious.
Oh,
Like,
awesome.
Yeah.
I've had so much fun.
Really, really informative. And yeah, thank you.
I think Liz and I will each be scheduling appointments with our husbands.
Right. Exactly. Or just for myself. I
Yeah,
could
probably
use it.
both.
Yeah,
love
a
it.
good reader.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to everyone who tuned in, thank you so much for listening.
Please do head to our website, finelinepodcast.com, where you can find all our episodes. You can donate. You can check out our new t-shirts
Buy a t-shirt.
that are for sale, that are really cute, different styles. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.